And so, welcome this evening and tomorrow morning to the Holopath podcast, Rosie Whinray, who delights in the title of the Wizard of Wellington. Rosie is a writer, an artist, visual artist, material artist, a magician, a wizard, obviously, and is, I think, one of the people who is writing some of the most incisive, illuminating pieces that are going into the world at the moment on her Substack, which we will talk about. So, Rosie, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. I was saying just before we got on the call that I'm quite buzzed this morning. I woke up quite buzzed. It's the new moon this morning.
So, the new moon,
Eclipse
yes,
moon.
the eclipse moon that has just happened about 2 hours ago, we said.
Hmm.
Okay, so we are sharing a new moon, dark moon eclipse, and I am just coming up to late in the evening, 11 o'clock, and you on the other side of the world are tomorrow morning,
10 a.m. Yep.
10 a.m. there. So, Rosie, we've known each other for a few years now, and you have been working on different artistic, magical projects. You've had exhibitions, you've had all sorts of things. And one of the ones that I remember first learning about you was this idea that you had the title of the Wizard of Wellington. Tell us about this. Where does this come from?
So the wizard thing is, it is a self-appointed title, but nobody has had it before. It was kind of up for the taking, I thought. And what the reason it came about in the first place was this thing started happening to me in my life where I would be at a party or I'd be talking to someone and this particular type of conversation would occur where quite quickly they would start talking about their most pressing question, I guess, in their life. And I think what it was, I think, was a kind of active listening that I was doing. I was
Mm,
just kind of not saying much, but drawing them out. And they would come to the question and then they would answer the question. So it was this kind of type of conversation that started happening to me again and again, where I would be privy to someone asking and then answering something really puzzling and important. And
mm,
I wanted to put a name to that thing that was happening. And I was like, that's a thing that it's kind of a role. And
yeah.
all the words for, I thought I would study counseling. I didn't end up doing that because I don't like hierarchy and I don't do well with, being told what to do. So I was walking down Happy Valley where I live here one night. It was dark, it was nighttime, and I had this magic stone which me and my friend Tom shared, and I was rubbing the magic stone, and suddenly this word just dropped upon me, which was wizard. And I
Mm,
was like, that's it, that's the word, because nobody knows what it means. Essentially, it's like that it's not a field that's understood. So I said, if I just hang my shingle out as a wizard, nobody can gainsay me. Nobody can say you're not doing it right or you
yeah.
should apply to the Council of Wizards or whatever.
Well,
And
exactly.
I
You
thought,
can't be like a board certified wizard or do your
no,
kind of 2 year diploma course in wizardry. Well, I'm sure somebody probably offers it, but there isn't an official sort of hierarchy, as you said.
no, that's right. And also because I'm a woman, I'm female, I thought, that's a kind of because witch means a certain thing to people. Witch has a modern meaning, but wizard, in a sense, doesn't have a modern meaning. It's like,
Mm,
in any case, I knew that was the correct word, and I thought, how am I going to mark my wizardly, my wizard role? I thought I need
yeah,
a magical garment, and I decided I would construct this coat. I mean, I can show it to you later, maybe, but
yeah.
anyway, I got this went and bought a long black coat and I stitched a green snake onto the shoulder of the coat, which I cut off a little kid's t-shirt. that I'd been hoarding for ages because I really like this.
Hopefully the kid wasn't in it at the time.
It's like $1 or something. The snake came over, and on the original T-shirt, the tail was on the front. The tail was on the back of the T-shirt, and the head was on the front. But I flipped it around so that the head was on the back of my coat, and I hand sewed it on. And as soon as I did that, immediately magical things started happening. And it had been kind of a half a joke, I guess. But then I was like, oh, okay, it's actually real.
I think that so many things that take on these kind of magical and highly significant meanings, they do start as jokes. Like it's kind of the trickster energy. We're kind of half serious, half not, giving it a go. And you're right. There's something about that word wizard, because obviously the word witch in popular culture has become such a huge thing. And again, people can't agree on what it means either, but you hear people referring to themselves as witches, magicians, occultists. Obviously there's a lot of discourse. I was going to say shaman. There's a lot of discourse about shaman, obviously, because you've got all these questions of cultural appropriation or appropriateness, but you rarely hear people calling themselves wizards. And yet the word, it does evoke a role. It's not just something you do. It's a place in society. And it's often, as you said, like, it's not somebody who's necessarily part of a hierarchy. It's kind of, this person is singular. This person is out there, And often when I think of wizard, I think we all probably think of Merlin, Gandalf, people like that, who have this role.
Big beard, pointy hat.
Big beard and pointy hat, just like you. But who have this role of counsel. They are not necessarily the one who's at the center of things.
And the etymology of wizard is the wise art, the one with wisdom.
Exactly.
So the funny thing is that New Zealand does have a tradition of public wizards. The Wizard of Christchurch is a notable public wizard who's now like really old. He's 94 or something, 95. And he's there's a whole lineage of the wizard was an academic who went rogue, and he started Elf's Imperial Army, which is the anti-Vietnam War protest movement where everyone dresses up silly and has big mock battles. From Elf's came the McGillicuddy Serious Party, which was a satirical political party, which was awesome. And I know heaps of those people who are like ex-Elfs or ex-McGillicuddies. They're all punks and anarchists now. And there was actually a Duke of Wellington. So the Duke of Wellington was Tony Catford, and his wife is still alive, but there was never a Wizard of Wellington. And I was like, Wellington is a very wizardly city. I was like, Wellington needs a wizard. And
also, you've got a wonderful alliteration. I mean, the Wizard of Wellington just sounds like it must exist, right?
Exactly.
So why is Wellington?
My name is starts with the W.
Yeah.
Why
is Wellington a wizardly city?
Because it's riddled with the wild. Because it's got this geography where, first of all, there's all these green corridors through the city, the green belt. So there's all these kind of forest corridors, and inside Wellington is the largest non-island bird sanctuary in the world, called Zealandia. And from out of that little fence sanctuary, well, it's large actually, all these birds come, like really rare birds. And then also there's the harbour, and where I live on the coast, on the south coast, so there's all this sea involvement as well. So there's a lot of wild animals here, and there's a lot of energy from that, I feel. It's also, there's a lot of, well, traditionally there's been a lot of creative people here, but that's being gentrified out somewhat. But also another thought experiment I had about the wizard, I was like, how would I feel? So this was in 2020, by the way, which is also when you and I met. But the beginning of 2020 dawned, it was freaky. It was the wildfires in Australia, with the smoke was blowing across the Tasman, and so the air was this really weird color. This was New Year's, and this is like everything was sepia toned, and you could smell the smoke in the air. And I was like, this is going to be a year. This is going to be a big year. This is the dawn of 2020. I was like, I have to go public now. I have to come out of the broom closet, as they say. And and I was still reluctant to do that. So I thought, okay, how would I feel if, say, in a couple of years, some beardy idiot appears and goes, I'm the Wizard of Wellington? What I would want at that point would be for everyone to go, no, you're not, she is.
Yeah.
So if I don't go public, I'm not going to actually have the public role. And it is kind of a joke. But like Wizard Ari, who's the wizard's he's another wizard of Christchurch. He says, "You're a wizard if people say you are," which I think is more or less true.
I think so. And have you had in your public role as wizard, what kind of reactions have you had from people when you tell them you're a wizard, or when you hand out your business card, or when you do an art exhibition as a wizard?
Oh, most people are totally down with it. But some people it sort of like makes a door slam in their mind, and they just think that I'm a charlatan or crazy or whatever. Like they can't handle that word, they can't handle the idea. But generally very positive. Like generally people are like, oh, cool, awesome.
Yeah,
You know.
but that's almost kind of good too. Like if there are people who immediately shut themselves off from the idea, I think they're possibly just relegating themselves out of communication with you, and probably just as well.
It's kind of a litmus test. It's like anything. It's like you can kind of parse people's openness by it, but it is silly, and that's the point. You know, it is, but it's real. It's a double bluff almost.
Yeah, no.
Also, the other thing is, it literally just draw. I didn't think about it, you know, cosmology that I've spun after the fact, to explain what I'm doing and what it means to me.
Okay, we slightly broke up a little bit there. I think I might have lost a few words from you, but I think I get what you're saying. So yeah, and you've been an artist all your life, I think, and that has gone hand in hand with magical practice. Would you say?
No, I think the magic thing is far more recent.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
But in a way, I think art is literally magic. I mean, art even without any magic is magic. It's just a magical practice of itself. So I think in a way you could say that art was my magic practice, you know?
Okay. So I know you had been very into photography. You had been doing drawing, illustration, different types of visual art. And then what brought you into the magical part of things? Explicitly magical, let's say.
It was the wizard thing. Honestly, it was just wizard business. And that was also, it seems kind of like what I thought about as well is that we make up stories all the time. Like we make up stories about the world all the time. What happens if you make up a more interesting story? You know? Like so it's a lens. So it's an interesting lens. It's like a way to parse things as, you know, more wizardly or less wizardly. It's I mean, I wouldn't say that I have a magical practice as such. I mean, I guess I do, but it's so entwined with my art practice that it's indistinguishable, you know.
Yeah, and I think that um, I wouldn't say you don't have one as such, but I totally see what you mean about them being completely entwined. I mean, I know that even from your what you were saying earlier, you're talking about having a magic stone in your pocket, and you're talking about, creating yourself a wizard coat. I have a wizard coat too. The effects are like unquantifiable of having a coat
Mm,
that is obviously a wizard coat. And
yeah.
then I know also that you've had for a really long time you've been like a great reader of tarot cards. You've been interested in astrology. Like you actually often when we talk, you will mention what the astrological weather is, or eclipse weather or moon weather, um, all of these things. And I think all of those meshed with your artistic practice, to me, there's no doubt that you have a magical practice.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
it's
yeah.
it's that it's not about necessarily I'm going to do a ritual, but it's about investing symbolic and magical value in the objects around you, in the seasons of the stars, the moon, the planets, the cards. Um, even your big art projects that you've done seem to me to have an intensely magical result, but also an intensely magical process. For example,
Yeah.
you had a big exhibition. Was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year. It wasn't very big, it was quite small. It's the only time I've had an exhibition.
When I say big, it was
It was big for
significant.
me.
It doesn't
Yeah, it
mean,
was.
I don't mean like it was giant. It wasn't
It was
giant.
grand.
But tell us about your exhibition, because for me, the process that you went through to create it, and the what you displayed, what you put on show, was highly magical.
Yeah, so my friend Dan asked me to do it in his space, which is called the Pyramid Club. It's like an experimental music venue. And um, I decided to, he specifically asked me if I would make a show about beachcombing, which is one of the things I do a lot. And I decided I wanted to take the small things and make them big. So I wanted to make like really large scale photographic prints of these very tiny, mostly very small things I've found on the beach after walking on the beach almost every. Yeah. So this was another lockdown thing. I walked on the beach every day
Yeah.
instead of just once in a while. I did it every day, and I I I have like a big collection of stuff I've found on the beach, and I have a relationship with the beach. So this is to what I was thinking when you were talking about, there's the lone wolf thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's lone wolf thing and also animism.
Yeah.
Like if I have any affiliation, it's animism, thinking that everything's alive all the time. And the beach is alive. The things, randomness is also really important to me. So the beachcombing thing is about randomness. It's about what wants to show itself, and it's the same in tarot, right? Except I
Yeah.
mean, tarot. Enrique would say it's sortilege, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
it's seeing what shows itself, and that's not a. It's again, it's about not controlling. You've got to leave. I feel like magic occurs when one creates the correct conditions for meaningful chance, almost.
Yeah.
And with beachcombing, the beach is a space that's boundaried. It's like a certain defined space.
Yes.
And I was talking about this with my friend Nicole the other morning. She was interviewing me about it, and it's that boundary is important. Or with the reading of tarot, it's the question that creates a boundary almost. So
Yeah.
yeah, the show came about because I'd been writing these Facebook posts about things I found on the beach, and Dan read those posts and he was like, "Do you want to have a show about beachcombing?" I was like, "Sure." Um, but that was an aberration because I was already in writing by that point. So
Yeah.
doing the visual art, like and also the records that I was drawing from for that show were not art in the sense that they weren't like I am making art now. They were a literal record that I had made by photographing the things I found and by so they were almost byproduct or but I can't help but try to make things beautiful. It's kind of a
Of
reflex.
course. And I
Um,
totally agree with what you're saying about this idea that it's a form of sortilege in the sense of you are drawing in the sense of drawing lots, like picking up
mm,
objects that chance offers you. And when you establish a space like that, it's just like what they did when, the sort of the Roman art of reading the flights of birds, augury.
mm.
They would draw a templum, a temple, which is a space, a delimited space, and say, any birds that fly through this space that I have drawn, you know, that's what I'm going to
The
read.
important ones. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
and but well, it's not that they're the important ones. It's that, as you say, you have to draw off a space in order to read, because otherwise there is too much signal. Like everything in the
Mm,
world is a signal. I do the same
mm,
thing. Like I go for a walk along the river with my dog every morning now, and I read the birds that I see, the
yeah,
birds or
yeah.
the omens. And the space that I'm giving is the time of my walk along the riverbank. And I'm looking out over the river, and I assign meanings to the birds that I see or whatever. But it's yes, you must give a certain parameter, and within that,
Mm,
whatever chance offers you. So yeah, I definitely think that's a kind of a magical act. And with the tarot deck, obviously the deck is one limit, and then the question is the other limit that allows you to have a lens for the reading. So
yeah. And also what you're giving when you're on your walk is you're giving your full attention.
exactly, exactly,
And the
because
attention of a wizard is not a it's a so it's a certain it's like there's attention and there's attention. There's trained attention, do you know what I mean? There's
yeah,
like the more you do a thing, the more it's the same with art. It's to do with labor and time. Like you can't there are no shortcuts to skill, to craft. We could say craft is a better word, but the craft of being able to do something simple in the moment with a decade's practice behind you. So
yeah,
people see that moment and they go easy.
yeah.
You go, yeah, okay.
But but but
But
you're right. But you're right. The thing is, I think also there is there's the craft of the making of the creation, but the craft that comes first is the one you're talking about, which is a way of being in the world. It's a way of paying attention. It's a way of noticing,
yeah,
which I think that you could link not only with animism, because if you consider that everything in the world is living and conscious, then the way that you pay attention to it and what it's saying to you is very different from
yeah,
somebody who
yeah.
moves through the world of inanimate objects. Um, it's like there's a quote from Henry James that I love, where he says, "It's not so much write what you know, like anybody can write anything, but for a writer, what you need to do is you need to be someone upon whom nothing is lost."
Mm, mm. And there's that reminds me of Thoreau. There's a great bit from Thoreau from his journals where he says, like, uh, as a traveler goes around the world, let the poet catalog the thoughts that pass through his mind. I can't remember the quote
Mm,
exactly, but you note what occurs in your field, I in mine, and
yeah,
into every. It's almost like watching. Once that attention is trained, then watching one's own mind is another of those practices, and that's what
yes,
writing is.
yes, and
And
that's
I
a
think also like you kind of the thing about any of these, it doesn't matter what you do. like it doesn't matter what I think. This is part of wizarding for me, is people are wizards in their own way. You have to go with what is alive for you.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a solitary thing, because everyone has to find their own cosmology. They have to find their own areas of work. And so I just follow what is interesting to me. I'm just trying to stop myself from being bored, basically. And
But I think that's important, and I think that yes, everyone should. And I think perhaps one of the failings that we have in general is that sometimes people try to adopt their cosmology or their ideas of what is interesting from other people, whereas in fact you are the only arbiter of
yeah, that's right.
your own worldview, your cosmology, what is interesting to you, um, how you assign meaning in the world. And if you try to
Mm.
adopt someone else's or some groups, it's never going to be truly authentic. It's
Well, it
never going to
doesn't
be
fit you,
your
yeah.
voice, right?
Yeah.
But this is a
But I,
good.
but I think the world conspires against it. That's the thing. You have to be really
Mm,
stubborn to you, especially through the way education happens, the way it's so often like little children are really wizardly, and then
mm,
it just gets kind of sanded out of them. And
yeah.
uh it's because it is actually very subversive to be a mystic,
Oh,
because to
completely. And I would say to be a mystic, perhaps the way I see it at least, to be a mystic is the receptive part, like where you're living in a world with that kind of, you can receive and be in touch with the divine. But the active part is the wizardly part or the magician part, is where you act on it.
mm, mm.
You can then take what you have received and create from it and move from it and change from it. But this is a good kind of slow segue into talking about your writing, because you've, I guess you've always written a bit, but you started writing very seriously in the last few years. And I want to really get into talking about that. Tell me about that.
So the phrase that arose for me was, what you work on works on you.
Mm,
Yeah, and that's just to conclude my thought about that the medium doesn't matter. I
mm,
think deep practice of any art form, of any form, even, it doesn't even have to be art, but if you do like deep, humble practice really consistently of anything, it will change you. Like
yeah.
it can't help but change you. And that's part of why it's so magical, is because it's a dialogue with something else. And form is a part, yeah, form is a part of that. So for me, in my life, I've made a lot of sideways leaps between one medium and another. My first one was photography, as you mentioned. When I was, a teenager, I started doing
Yeah.
that, and that was my first big art love affair, was with the camera, with the film camera. And then I mean, I've always done like lots of things in parallel as well. Some rise, some fall. So I was doing metalwork then. I was doing craft, a lot of craft, and I was doing. Also, I started writing in my journal in my early 20s. So that's when I started writing seriously, and
Yeah.
I've been doing it since then. But also, there's folk singing. But the other main thing that we haven't touched on is the drawing. So for a
Yeah.
decade, I between 2010 and 2020, I did a ink drawing a day. Um, and that was the kind of like dominant project of my life. And that's what
Mm,
I was doing when we met. And I remember, because we met reading tarot cards online during lockdown. And I
yeah,
remember
exactly.
one of my very first questions was about, should I stop drawing? And everyone told me that I shouldn't. And I was like, well, I'm going to. So, you know, they were like, no, no, you mustn't stop. I was like, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop drawing, because and once I stopped drawing, I had done that project so consistently for so long that I was kind of burnt out. I had to just have a couple of years off,
Yeah.
or maybe a year and a half off. And then
I can still see I can still see in my head some of those daily drawings, the ink drawings, because like I was following them, like, and I remember like there's a couple of drawings that you did. You did a drawing of my famous hat with feathers.
that was
Um,
like the second to last one of all time. Yeah.
oh
It was
man,
literally the day
and
before the day
can
before I ended.
can you, for those people who can see, can you show us what's in your hat? You've got a
Oh yeah,
feather in your
so
hat. Yes, feather in your
I
hat.
put this hawk
Yeah,
feather in my head in honor of Malachus Avernus.
and this is,
And I
that
it's
and that drawing, I which you sent me a print of it,
a print, yeah.
and I've got that, and I've used it online, of that famous hat with feathers, which was also representative of a time in my life which is now over. I don't know if I ever
Yeah.
told you, but that hat was ritually immolated. Um,
No, no.
it was. I'll tell you about that some other time. But it needed to be. It was too full of weird juju, you know. But
It's absorbed all your brain waves for so
yeah, yeah,
long.
yeah. Well, but those drawings, like what an incredible chronicle of 10 years of your life, like a drawing every day. And
Yeah.
you did them. They could be objects, or they could be a scene or a person or a moment, but they were these beautiful, um, quite sort of not, they weren't kind of very elaborate, but they were like beautifully captured objects or movements. I loved some of the ones of a person moving. It's like a little
Yeah.
kid dancing was one of them. I think it was a nephew, maybe. Those are amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So my late style was quite free, yeah. And I've just now packed all of them away. They're sitting right there, but they're all packed away in boxes. Otherwise I'd show you a few.
Mm,
But the thing about the drawings was they were beautiful and people liked them. And they, as you say, they were a record, which now from where I am now makes looking through them not a neutral experience.
mm,
Same with my journals. Like
of course.
looking back through old work is really emotionally complex because it's also personal. That's the thing about being a record keeper is you do note everything is kind of encoded into those drawings. Like I can
Yeah.
remember where I was, what was happening. So they mean something to other people different to what they mean to me. And partly I did it to prove something. Partly I wanted to prove that I could have discipline. I wanted to prove that I wanted to trick myself into making a big work by making a lot of small work. But it became a real like rod for my own back. I really didn't love doing it, and I
Mm,
kind of never loved doing it.
interesting.
It was a chore, it was labor, and I knew that I shouldn't be doing it.
Mm,
But like I don't want to disenchant the I know it's good work. I know it's alive work,
mm,
and now I'm using those drawings in my writing a lot. Like I
mm.
think the tension between word and image is really interesting.
Oh
So I
yeah.
use them in my Substack a lot. But once I finished that drawing project, I just was burnt out and I didn't know what was gonna happen next. I didn't know what the next form was going to be. But it turned out to be writing. And
Yeah.
writing was a thing I had always done, as I said, but so I had talked to myself a lot.
Mm,
And that's I think really key to my work is it's resting on personal practice and it's resting the spine of it is record keeping.
yeah.
Like I'm kind of compelled to keep a record about daily life and I'm only interested in that. I'm not really interested in making stuff up or
Mm.
fiction or I'm interested in what life is, what's happening now, the minutiae of
Mm.
the mundane is
And
what
that's
really interests me.
and that is, I mean, it's interesting you say so, because I do think when you give us in your writing these vignettes of day-to-day life,
Mm,
or sometimes memories, but
yeah,
vignettes of day-to-day life, and for some reason, the ones that often touch me the most are, it's like a sort of aversion in words, aversion in impressions of eavesdropping. It often takes place maybe on the bus or on the street. It's urban landscapes where you observe strangers in little
Mm.
moments, or you have an interaction with them. Um, and I find these incredibly touching, and I can see that these have an almost kind of sketchbook quality. It's like you're out in nature, taking
Mm.
sketches from the real, and also charting with an amazing sort of sense of compassion, but also attention to detail, the lives of others, little glimpses into the lives of others. But there is also this side, which I think is also perhaps even more um, noticeable in your work, is the conversation with yourself, where it
Yeah.
turns into a reflection. Like it might be sparked by vignettes or scenes that you see in the world, but it turns into a reflection on a theme or an issue or a topic. And it's quite philosophical, but it has a great sort of playful quality as well. You're having fun. You put in a lot of footnotes and quotations,
Mm.
and it's serious. It's often very heartfelt. It's very profound, but it never loses that playful quality of almost bantering with yourself.
So so funnily enough, I'm literally right this second before I got on the call with you, I'm writing about footnotes because Ross Gay has a little essayette in his book, which I'm just reading, which is about footnotes. This one
So
here.
Ross Gay, yeah, and you've written about him in a couple of essays recently.
Yeah, I
Um,
really love this guy.
he
I've
sounds
just
amazing.
discovered
I
him.
actually have to get his book because or multiple on your recommendation because he sounds so good.
So that's the weird
Briefly
thing
tell
is
us who
that
he is.
he's
Where
an
is he from?
American he's an American poet, and he's a professor in Indiana,
Mm,
and he's so it's his work is a lot about joy, his recent work, and but it's like what I was thinking about before we got on the call is that people only do that if they have to. Like he doesn't shy away from the fact that this is a book of little essays that are about things that delight him, and
yeah.
it's the second one that he's done, but he doesn't shy away from the fact that it's because his brain can be kind of an awful place to live,
Mm,
and that's the same with Walt Whitman, same with like a bunch of people you could name.
mm,
But in terms of footnotes and like that, what you're talking about, the sense of humor thing, that having a sense of humor, I think of that as the wizard quality. Like
yeah.
I do try to, that's my favorite voice of mine. And a funny thing about voice or about style. So as an artist, you do your best. I mean, like I'm aiming for accuracy, but of course there is style that occurs and there is voice that occurs. So
Yeah.
writing in my journal, I have a certain voice when I'm talking to myself, and writing on Substack, I had to find a new tone. I had to find a new
Hmm.
voice, and I really wanted to carry across some of like lightness of,
Yeah.
because this is what Gay does, and what he does is very similar to what I'm doing at the moment, which is it's like personal anecdote mixed in with, well, I mean, I call it hedge philosophy. It's like,
Mm. Well, we're very
yeah,
into hedge school stuff over here, you know?
yeah. But that lightness and that kind of like ability to take the piss and make some jokes and stuff, I think that's really important because it's a very powerful thing to
It
not
is.
not take things so seriously. I mean, that it's paradoxical, and paradox and uncertainty and complexity are things I really heartfeltedly believe in. That really
But I totally agree. And I think that what you're saying, I think also those are wizardly qualities, paradox, uncertainty, and the trickster element,
mm,
and the ability to deal with um, complex and difficult issues with a lightness of touch. Now,
mm,
it doesn't mean being unserious. It means
no,
being light, and there is a grace to that. There is a kind of um, a skill to that, like a kind of a sleight of hand, where you're actually managing to get people to read your work um, without it being overly dense or heavy or dry, but you can still talk about very serious things.
I think what it is as well is I don't think I could have done it 5 years ago. Definitely couldn't have done it 10 years ago. What I mean is I couldn't have done writing in public because I was
Yes.
too angry. No, I was too scared really. It took me ages to work up to because I'm trying to do what I like. Like I'm always trying to emulate in writing in particular, I'm trying to make something like what I like. So I'm trying
Yes.
to emulate the people that I admire.
Mm,
And that's kind of where I get my ideas about style and form and things like that. So because I enjoy nonfiction over fiction, I'm writing nonfiction. Because I
mm,
like the essay form, I'm writing essays. And because I personally like a bit of, digression and
mm,
personal touch and all of that.
mm,
But it's so interesting with writing because to get back to drawing, which I felt was not, as I said, it was very laborious. Writing is very alive to me. It's more alive than anything else that I've ever done. And
mm.
that's what makes it so easy to do. Because I know that a lot of writers like writing's so hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard. To me, it feels easy. And maybe
Mm,
it's because I'm coming from that hard discipline of making myself do something every single day,
mm,
every day without fail. It just feels like play to me. It feels like
mm.
really, and that discipline of looking, and I mean looking with my eyes, looking visually at
Yeah.
whatever I was drawing. That's what has honed that observational skill that lets me, as you say, see things. And
Mm,
then the memory thing, which is from folk singing, which is another thing I do. So like I've worked a lot on my memory. So I can remember what happened. I can remember
yeah.
a whole 10 minutes worth of conversation or whatever. So I can just trust that my eyes can see and my brain can remember. And then later I can just note it down. I can just
Mm,
take it all down. So in the moment, I don't need to be recording or like I am the recorder.
yeah.
And then when I write it down, I'm paying attention to what it makes me think about, what my associations are. And that's just a kind of like self-study. It's like I am the instrument and I'm also the observer of the instrument.
Yeah.
And all I have to do is note down what arises.
Yeah.
Literally. It's and that and it often feels like I'm in dialogue with something I don't know, you know. I'm in
That's
dialogue with my own subconscious.
it's fascinating because I think that what you're talking about, in a sense, it's almost as if you had been training intensively for this without knowing
Mm,
that you were training intensively for this, and that you had um, even that idea of the observation, the visual observation, but then to be able to draw something with that economy of line, like with
mm,
just a few lines to capture a thing,
mm.
the feel of a
Yeah,
thing, the
because I'm very interested
movement,
in
you know.
simplicity. I'm interested in
Yeah,
minimalism.
yeah. But
Yeah.
and so I think that what are we in dialogue with when we write? I have the same experience of writing as you. Um, I find it absolutely fun and playful, and it flows and it's easy. My problem at the moment is literally just having time to sit and do that when I should be doing things that are my job, like that, to make money or to look after my kids or to look after my house, or whatever. I don't have writer's block. I have like obstacles on the way to my desk, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but something we were talking about, and this is really interesting to me too. So your craft is fascinating to me. And I said to you, I've said this to you before, you seem to have this ability to write, to express things, to articulate things that I read and I recognize myself so deeply in them when I say, oh, thank you for giving me those words that I had not found myself. And you were saying that, and I imagine other people find this quality in you too, and that you feel like that is a particular role, that's a particular vocation.
Yeah, we were discussing this before. This is what, it's funny because there's a sort of a tension between society's idea that to talk about oneself, to think about oneself is narcissistic, it's egotistical, and that idea I just mentioned, that I am my only authority. Like what I feel in my own body, what I experience, that is my place of authority. So there's something about, it has to be subjective, you know, and that only through that subjectivity can it be objective.
Yes. And also only through the specificity can it be universal.
Exactly.
Right? Because
So
if you try to write something for everyone, it's bland, it's banal. But if you write
yeah,
about your secret heart, even if other people don't share your experience, they can identify with the quality of the experience, or they can identify even with the vulnerability of what you're saying.
yeah, and that's a trust thing. That's a
Yeah,
trust thing. Like
for sure.
trusting that if I name what occurs, what Thoreau says, you shall observe what occurs in your latitude, I in mine. Like that's the only thing we can observe. And before we got on the call, we were talking about my piece Precarity Blues on the Substack. And
Yeah.
that like usually I'm more measured, but that one kind of, it just kind of came out, and it was about for it was about being kicked out of my house where I've been living for a year and a half by myself, this house that I'm in now. And that was the response I got from people all over the world. And I had thought that, okay, this is a very Wellington piece. It's a very New Zealand concern, you know, gentrification, precarity, all that stuff. Of course, I know it's not only here, but the specifics of this housing crisis here are so particular that I thought, oh, this is a piece for other New Zealanders. But in fact, heaps of people all around the world were like, ah, that's, you know, me too. They were like,
Yeah.
you named something that I feel. And that was a solidarity. That's like, and that's partly what enables me to get over the idea that, oh, it's egotistical to write about myself, you know, or I don't really have a choice anyway, because that's just what I do. That's
Yeah.
what's available to me. That's my material that's available. But the idea that, yeah, that I can help people to, or that we can exchange experiences and ideas, and that can make everyone understand more. That's
Oh,
what writing
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely. And I think that you know, there's a way of talking about oneself that is narcissistic, that is egotistical, but there's also a way of talking about oneself that is generous, that is sharing, that is offering a gift to other people of, I have been sitting thinking about this for so long, and I have been working on my craft to express it for so long. And if I do this now, this is a gift I offer you, because it may enable you to recognize in yourself similar experiences, or it may enable you to recognize the experience of another. And that is something that makes our life richer. That makes the tapestry of our lives and our understandings richer. It is when we give in a generous way of ourselves,
Yeah.
that's a gift.
Yeah, and this is what I'm all about, is gift economy. You know, is this I'm writing about this and same with Ross Gay. I'm
Yeah.
just writing about Lewis Hyde, because that idea of the gift economy, the idea that art itself is a gift, it's a mighty inheritance that we receive from, you know, countless others who've worked before us.
Yeah.
We can't, so the craft itself, as well as the inspiration and the ideas, are both gifts. They're things that we receive for free, And so therefore it's hard to sell art. It's hard to, because art itself wants to be given. That's how I feel about it. And so the paradox of the ego thing is that when you're doing the true work, your ego has nothing to do with it. It's not even, it's a really weird thing, because you kind of just have to get over yourself and get out of your own way. Like because what is egotistical and what is selfish is not doing it.
Right.
Like not doing the work. Like,
right.
Because you're too
or not
precious,
sharing it, thinking, nobody would understand. I'm the tortured artist in my little ivory tower. I'm just gonna, but that would
Which
not
is
be.
not to say I don't have compassion for that state of mind, because I've been in that state of mind.
Of course.
Like, if you might not be ready to, of course you have to have your private practice, you have to sort of,
and it's frightening, it's scary, it's scary to share it, it's scary to put it out there. But you and I have talked about this before, and the gift economy idea, and the idea that obviously we have to live, and so we have to, in this society, we have to exchange our skills and capabilities and product for financial reward in order to keep clothes on our back and food in our belly and a roof over our head. But the thing we do wants to be free. And I don't mean it wants to be, I mean it wants to be at liberty, and it wants to be outside the economy of capitalism. It wants to be a gift. But when we give it, we do not expect, and yet we kind of know that we will receive gifts in return. And we do. And this is not just about our writing or our art. It's also about our magic. It's also about our attention. And it's about our care. We don't give them expecting remuneration. We give them because they need to be given, because they are gifts. They are our gifts. We share them. That's what we do.
It's subtle. It's subtle. That's the thing. It's hard to talk about, because all of this is anti-capitalist. It's actually deeply anti-capitalist, because capitalism would have us believe that people do things for money, and that's the sole reason people do things,
or that people do
things away as foolish,
or that people only do things in terms of reciprocity, because it's that too,
for their own interest.
For their own interest, that nobody's ever going to do something unless they can get something in return. It doesn't have to be money. But of course, I'm not saying, that we don't need to be paid, and that art and effort that we put into it doesn't need to be rewarded. It does. And we need to be able to live. And so we talked about this concept earlier too, especially in relation to that piece that has become really quite popular of yours about the precariat. And in terms of living situations, the idea of the importance of the space, and that is the room of one's own, that you have had. You started your Substack, what was it, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, so I started my Substack prior to moving out of my old house, which was down the road. So this is the second time I've been kicked out in less than 2 years. And I started the Substack a month before moving out of the old place. And it's hard to say why I did that. I wanted there to be something to carry me through that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just wanted to start something new, and that's when I did it. But when I took this place, theoretically I knew that living alone would be conducive to my work, know. But I had never, ever experienced it in my life. So it was pure theory. It was like, people say that is good for writing, But then when I actually settled in here and actually started to do the work that I'm doing now on my Substack, I just wasn't prepared for how it would feel to actually get what I needed for the first time in my life, because I have chosen time over money in my life. I've chosen abundant time over abundant money. And because that's the precondition of my work. That's what my work needs, but you always have to choose, right?
Yeah.
And so I've never lived alone. I've never had this before. And the crazy thing was, it took having it to really understand what people don't have, like what we lose when we don't have what we need, and what it. I wrote another piece when I first moved in here from the old house, which was about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and about houseplants. It was about how when we put a plant in a pot, we create the conditions that that plant inhabits, and we put that pot in a room. We are the god of the plant, and we create its conditions, and
Yeah.
the plant responds to those based on what it needs and what it's getting or not getting. So if it has what it needs, it puts out leaves, it might flower. But it's not the plant's fault if it doesn't have what it needs, and that's kind of on us. And or the reason I was thinking about this was in my last house, the plants were unhappy because it was too cold and too dark. And it's like, well, if plants can't survive, how are humans meant to survive? You know, in a really damp, dark house. And when I moved in here, the plants all loved it because there's so much light here. And I was like, okay, so that thing of like, actually what humans need is semi-universal. To a degree, it's universal, that Maslow has on the very base of the pyramid. I think it's like, you know, oxygen, water, food, shelter.
Yeah.
And then going up from there, things like, you know, warmth, hygiene, you know, safety, so on and so on. And at the very, very top, you have self-actualization needs, which are, you know, what we're trying to do as artists.
Right.
Advance ourselves, think about things, be creative, be educated, all of those things.
And you know, self-actualization, like I came across Maslow when I was a teenager, and that idea of self-actualization, I think from an early age, I thought, yeah, becoming yourself.
Yeah.
That was what
And
it felt like to me was, but that's so hard. If you
it's
don't have,
so
if there's something
rare.
missing from lower on the pyramid, it is so hard to think, to even know who I want to be, let alone become it.
Yeah,
If
God, yeah. And so that's the thing about it, is so few people have that privilege of self-actualizing, of being their best self, of like
yeah,
advancing into their true gifts and their
yeah.
true potential. And imagine what.
Even though our sort of capitalist society is constantly telling all of us, be your best self, buy this gym membership, be your best self, download this app, be your best self, buy these, you know, clothes that are going to, you know, push in your belly or whatever, you know, like everything sells itself as if it's the top of the pyramid, and actually none of
Yeah,
it is actually in the pyramid at all. But it's a language of like, you know, live your best life, be your best self, treat yourself, whatever. That has become totally co-opted. Even things like meditation and mindfulness. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's something you do now in the break room in your work, so that you can get back to work and actually be a good, you know, cog in the machine. It's not your
Yeah, so
best self. That's not your best self.
no, it's definitely not. But how are people to know? How can they know? They can't know because the knowledge is kept from them. And it sort of makes me think of the Jungian idea of addiction being a sublimated craving for the divine, you know,
That's
like that we
interesting.
take
Yeah.
what we can, but what we really want is union with the divine. That's what we're, and so this craving for self-actualization that's, you know, capitalized upon by capitalism
Yeah.
is a true human thing. It's a true desire for beauty, for truth, for, you know, evolution, for mutuality. Those are really ancient human
Yeah.
urges, and they're older than capitalism. That's the irony of it.
Of course. And
They're truer and
I think
older.
you're totally right, but I think that we do um we do get duped into thinking that things we can buy can give us like a little taste of transcendence, a little taste of the divine. And they do, like if they're drugs or if they're like no, but also like for example, designer experiences, luxury hotels, amazing sort of Michelin starred food or whatever. Yes, there is a certain aspect of transcendence in that, but it costs a lot of money. And
It's important to have good things. It's important to have good quality. Like, I mean, I just bought a pair of new boots, and I can't remember the last time I bought a new pair of boots. They're made in Dunedin, they're New Zealand made, and I ordered them in my size from the factory, and they made them and sent them to me. And that's very unusual for me. But I know that they're going to last for years and years and years. It's important to have, the things that you. So this is the thing. It's about needs versus wants, I think. And that thing of consumerist pleasure is, I mean, it's not who's making that food, who's growing that food, where does it come from. Magic is about the given phenomenon. You start pulling a thread, and where does that thread link to? Everything links to everything. So you can't take that kind of 5-star meal in isolation.
So of course the other thing is that there are certain things that can allow us to, be in contact with the divine, even momentarily, that are free, like dancing, singing, sex, looking at the sky and spitting around really fast. But those
wild animals.
Yeah, but those also, they keep trying to commodify them, and they keep trying to tell us that no, you're not having the right kind of dancing, and you're not having the right kind of sex, and you're not doing the right kind of singing. It sucks. And
late stage capitalism, zombie capitalism really does suck.
It's terrible for everyone. And you were saying to me before about just, I'm really interested in this idea of like what happened when you were in the room. You had a room of your own for a year and a half. What blossomed there?
I just suddenly, like, for one thing, it was to do with sleep. So I'm a very light sleeper. I grew up in the bush where it's very quiet and dark. I don't know if that's why, but I've always lived with lots of people, and I wear silicone earplugs to sleep when I'm in a flat or whatever, but I was always fatigued and tired. I never got enough sleep because I was waiting until everyone else went to bed before I could guarantee that I would go to sleep and stay asleep without getting woken up. And then when the first person woke up in the morning, I would wake up. So I was always tired. And that one factor alone is huge, to go from. And I know this is like a privilege thing because I am not a parent. I don't have children. I know that a lot of people are more tired than me, but tiredness and being able to think straight are hand in hand. Or not being able to think straight, rather. So having a good night's sleep and then being able to think about shit, that's literally probably the biggest difference. But also not having to talk to anyone. So my process is a morning process, and I never ever knew that before for the aforementioned reason. I was always tired in the morning. I always woke up feeling tired. And now, so in the correct circumstances, I wake up in the morning and I immediately have an idea. And I immediately don't talk to anyone because no one's here. I just go to my book and start writing. Or there's a seamless flow between sleeping, dreaming, waking, thinking, working.
Yeah.
Maybe having breakfast, having a coffee, working. And not having to because those processes, those thought processes are quite subtle, and dream processes there. And so having a conversation with anyone can disrupt that. So it's something about a lot of the things I do occur in solitude, walking in solitude, thinking in solitude, thinking a peacefulness. It's very quiet here.
That sounds
Like
amazing.
it's totally quiet.
Like
Yeah.
I love the idea of, well, for a start, having a good night's sleep. I don't remember the last time that happened, but
Yeah.
having a good night's sleep and then getting up in the morning and just being able to not be awoke, not be like shocked out of sleep, not be kind of like run into other people, run into situations, but be able to do that, what you described, like a very, very kind of gradual transition from dream and sleep into thought and work. And yes, what a privilege, what a luxury, but also a choice. I mean, you know, it's it's not like you're living in some kind of incredibly luxury accommodation. You know, you've got a little place with some
Yeah,
peace
I've
and
got a little
quiet.
cottage, and
Yeah,
it's quite primitive as well.
yeah.
It's quite old fashioned. It's like a little batch. It's got an outside bathroom, and it's got no hot running water inside, and that's fine for me. I don't mind that because
Yeah.
I don't mind living simply, you know.
Mm,
But the space and the peace and the solitude and the light,
mm,
it just what it made me just really really want to work. It was
mm.
like, because I was always conscious as well that I was unsure how long I would have this for,
Yes.
and I felt an urgency about really, but while I was doing that work, I was really able to understand the rhythms of it. I was able to understand when my brain works this way, when my
Yeah.
brain works that way, and without any other distractions, without any other, oh, so like I need to get up, I need to eat protein first thing in the morning. I need to,
Mm,
like, generally I'll eat eggs for breakfast because I need, if I don't, my brain doesn't
mm.
work properly, you know, and so, just real simple stuff like that about
But it was an
being able to
amazing. It
do
was,
what I needed to do at every turn, I guess, and then being like, oh, the work still does have its rhythm, and that, say I publish once a week, and that's the emergent pace that
mm,
happened. Like I didn't set that, it just happened. So I publish roughly once a week. Once I've published a piece, which might take me 4 or 5 days to write if it's like a long essay, and so I'll be working on it, and then through the day it comes a certain point I just have to stop. I
yeah.
can't do it anymore, my brain can't do it anymore, and I know that I have to wait till the next morning and start again. Next morning I'll have a fresh burst of whatever that allows me to see,
Mm,
okay, this is wrong, or
mm,
that I need to put in this or this, and then I publish, and then there's this lull of 2 days, 3 days, and I hate that lull, but I can't do anything about it. I just have to wait for the next
yeah.
one to arrive, and this is the natural rhythm,
Yeah.
and
For you.
people don't, for this work for me
Yeah.
here now. It will change when I'm not
Mm.
here. That's just how it emerged. And I guess the really crazy thing is that virtually no modern human gets to have the experience that I've just had.
They do not.
Right.
And
And
I was just thinking like
very aberrant.
it is, but also so your it also goes really well with the Substack model, like publishing
Yeah,
essays,
yeah,
right? Where on this platform that is kind of, for the moment, it's a platform which, as far as I can see, there's a lot of people who are writing good, serious, interesting work. They're writing the essay form, basically. A lot of it is personal essays or political or philosophical or whatever. Um, a lot of what I see anyway is that it perfectly suits your project, what you've been doing,
yeah.
and it allows you to have, subscribers for whom it is a gift, and it allows you to have subscribers who pay, who give that gift to you.
Yeah, that's
They
right. And
they
it's no
can
difference what they see either
exactly,
way.
which for you, like I mean, I like that. That would be my approach. I've thought about it. I don't think I'll do Substack, but my approach would always be everybody gets the same thing. Everybody,
Well, do
there's
you
no.
know, if do you listen to Blind Boy?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So in the middle of, Blind Boy Boat Club, he has his podcast that in the middle of every podcast, he does his little spiel about if you can't afford it, don't worry about it because the person who is paying for you to listen for free.
Exactly.
He goes,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's gift economy shit, right? That's gift economy
is.
stuff because I'm going to give it out there as a gift. And if anyone loves what I do and they have the means to support me, please do pay me. And then you're also paying for the people for whom it's a gift because they can't afford it and we're all happier.
Yeah,
I like
as Blind Boy says, it's a wonderful model based on kindness and soundness.
Exactly.
He didn't say that last time, but he usually says that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's
totally.
I mean, I am so my positioning is very, in some ways I'm very privileged. In some ways I'm very, by most people's standards, I'm very poor.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't consent to live how I live. But as I said, I choose time.
Yeah.
I choose time. But this particular year and a half of living here has been extremely educational.
Yeah.
And it's not because things have been added, it's because they've been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And we were speaking before the call about a room of one's own. When I was writing my piece about precarity, I didn't even think about that. But of course, economic conditions affect creativity. Of course, our lives. I don't know how most people write at all, to be honest.
And I've often found, like, for me, as somebody who has a job or multiple jobs, has children, etc., when I look for inspiration, for finding time to write, I often look at stories of women writers from 50 years ago or whatever who were expected to be mothers and expected to be taking care of their children and expected to often be working as well, and would be like up at 5 a.m. to write for an hour.
Mm.
And I'm like, I need to do that. I mean, but I find it hard. I find it hard to carve out that time on top of work plus family plus whatever. But it's interesting, I think, and this is what we were talking about earlier, when we brought up the Virginia Woolf sort of book essay, A Room of One's Own, is that when she was writing that, her argument was that this is why there are not women writers, is because they do not have independent income. I think it was 300 a year is what she specified.
500, yeah,
500 a year.
Yeah.
They needed an inheritance from a maiden aunt of 500 a year. They needed a room of their own. And I think
with a lock on the door, I think.
With a lock on the door. And I think that what you're saying is totally true, is that, yes, women at that time, she's writing in 1926, I think, so just about 100 years ago, almost no women had that, like the time, space, and financial security. But now, almost nobody has that. It's not just a thing of women. It's not, there aren't any men really anymore who are just like sitting around with leisure to write.
It's the children of the rich. The children of the rich have it.
Yes.
And I saw this meme that was like, the fact that the children of the extremely rich are artists and musicians proves that that's what everyone would do if they could. That's what that proves.
Exactly. And it shouldn't make us resent them, No. It's not their fault they have the time and space.
God, no.
Exactly what you say. Given the time and space, this is what people would choose.
Yeah. What I would say is, I think that, so what the last year and a half has shown me is that it's shown me what the actual labor is of writing when it is possible. So even in conducive conditions, there is still a large amount of labor required in terms of time.
Yes.
Attention, discipline of the mind, all of that stuff. So, that even so there are rhythms of that work, and that I think is the real takeaway is, and I can only speak for myself, but as I said, there's a certain amount of juice in the day, right? There's say 6 hours of work or 8. It's not even 8 usually, but I can work really, really hard and consistently, and then at a certain point I can't.
Yeah.
And that's an inbuilt limit of that labor. And I can work, you know, I think it's different for everyone, but I think most people don't even get the chance to explore those rhythms or those
Mhm.
natural rhythms, because they are kind of, and those are the rules of the work. Those are the emergent rules of the craft, and that is the same in any craft. Like it's so you have your commercial pressure or whatever, or what it means to other people, or but then you have your dialogue with the work, and that, yeah, I mean, I feel like I have to really humble myself to writing itself.
Mm.
And just be like, yes, I will do what you require of me.
But I
I
think
will
it's a
give you my
wonderful
time.
it's a wonderful experiment that you have done, because yes, you have had this freedom and this chance to have a room of your own, and you have taken, but it's also a choice and a sacrifice of time versus money, as you said, conditions of living that some people wouldn't accept. But you have given yourself, let's say, you have given yourself the gift of time and space
Mm,
and the light through the windows. And you have
yeah.
allowed yourself to find out some amazing things about you and your art and your gift
Well,
and
I've
your
I've
magic.
taken that chance. I feel I've
Yeah,
taken that chance, because I mean, I could have lived here and done other things. I could have
yeah,
gone out to work every day if I wanted, but I was already engaged on the project that I have continued on with. It wouldn't have it, and I'm still engaged in it now. I'm not gonna. But what the precarity essay said, and this was really the point of it, was that as soon as I got notice on this house, the minute that I was kicked out, which
yeah.
I'm, moving out now,
Mm.
my muse just gone. Like my muse, my ideas, my inspiration, and I'm still working now. I'm still writing stuff now, but that feeling of spaciousness, expansiveness, of all the time in the world to think and tutu and whatever. She was just, and that's, that's the normal conditions for most people re-emerging of like, oh, it's not safe here. I
Yeah,
can't relax. But it was like a switch turning off,
yeah.
like boom, gone.
But
And
I hope, I hope and wish for you, um, and I urge whoever is listening, there may come, I wish, I hope there will come a time when you again attain this peace and quiet and space to work. Through your writing, um, although we both know making a living from writing these days is very, very hard. Um,
yeah,
you've got,
I do have things lined up. I mean, I do have somewhere to move to. I do have, you know, I'm not going to be in the gutter. I'm not going to be on the street,
no,
but
but not in the gutter. But what I mean is that um, you found a mode of flourishing here that
yeah.
if we can recreate those conditions, I hope they will. I hope they will come around again, or that the way that you continue to invent your life will allow you another and different set of conditions for your work to flourish and for you to flourish like this. Because
Well,
what,
I know that I will continue, because there's a
yeah,
funny thing that people say to you when you say that you're an artist. They say, keep going. They say, like, they say, what do you do? I'm an artist. And when they see your work, or they think, because I don't know what they think, that, oh, you're not actually a real artist, but they look at my work and be like, oh, it's really good. You should keep going. Don't, like, okay, cool, I will. But I know that I have no other path to walk but this one. So I know that I keep going in whatever circumstances,
yeah,
and in a way that's interesting too. Everything becomes grist to the mill, right? Like
it
everything that
does, and
happens.
also, like we said earlier, right? It's also just a sense. It's a way of being in the world. Everything is interesting. Everything is
Yeah.
fucking fascinating if you look at it closely. you know,
yeah,
and that's what we do. And then we try to actually express it. So,
yeah. Try to make meaning. That's exactly it.
exactly. And,
And
you
so
know,
that's like a whole. It's a whole medicine. It's a whole medicine. But if I so the other thing is, if I was king of the world, I want everyone to have what they need. You
yeah,
know, I'd like, for me personally, okay, cool. What I need, I know what I need now. I've experienced these different conditions and it's been good for my work. Well, like I want everyone to have economic stability. I
yeah.
want everyone to have healthy, safe housing and enough time to do the things that matter to them and not to have their, you know, back, you know, their like not to be in the turning the wheel all the time. It's just not, it's not right. But all I can do is, yeah, I guess these are structural questions.
Mhm.
And part of the capitalist bait and switch is to be like, it's your personal fault,
Yeah.
you know.
Or your responsibility,
Yeah,
you know. Whereas,
sure, some
yeah,
things are our personal like, yeah, things are our personal responsibility, but structural inequality is real.
yeah.
And it's important to name that and to see it and not to be like, oh, I'm just a, you know, like it's my own fault that I'm in this position or whatever, which is what.
But I think that what you were saying earlier was really interesting too. I think it's not just about everyone having economic security and stability and so on, but it's also, wouldn't it be great if everybody did have the chance to figure out what their thing was, what they did want to do, and what made them feel useful and good and made them able to create meaning. And if everybody did have a chance to experiment with different schedules and different living circumstances to see what are the ones, what are the conditions in which I thrive? Because people don't mostly.
No,
People don't get to try. They don't get to ask themselves these questions ever. And
no, and imagine the work we would see. Like, imagine
oh,
what we would. This
imagine,
is the thing about it.
imagine
It's
when
not
you,
about the person who's doing the work. It's about the rest of
yeah,
us. It's about
when you told me,
society itself.
when you told me, and as we've talked, and as I've read your work in the last 18 months, um, it also made me think like, wow, imagine all the people who would benefit so much from a year or a year and a half in not necessarily exactly your circumstances, but just with peace and quiet and enough to thrive. And imagine the work they would do. Imagine what
God, yeah,
they
no.
do, you know? Um, it's, and
That's
the
what a
thing is,
residency is, I gather,
that's what
for
a
some.
resident, yeah, I guess. I mean, I know it. Like, I know that that's what people are given when they do residencies is peace and quiet and a room of their own. You know, that's literally
But
what
you have to get
offered.
to the point seen by the right people on the outside to be worthy of that
Or
of that
or you
gift.
pay $4,000. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I guess so.
but anyway, this has been an absolute pleasure, Rosie, and I've got to go because it's after midnight. And I've got to go and you remember that good night's sleep we talked about? I'm gonna go and have a
Try
go.
and have
Yeah, see what
it.
happens. Who knows?
Well, I think
It's
what
a
I'm
bold
gonna
new
do is
idea, but
I think what I'm gonna do is my friend Kelly wants me to go and make chain for her. So when I first got given notice on the house, I was down in my friend's workshop making chain. She's a jeweler and she wants me to go and help her. I also have to pack up my books. And I did start on that yesterday of packing the books off my shelves. But
I'm
it's
actually just in. I still haven't unpacked all of my books. I've got outside my study here. I've got boxes of books, including some that my parents brought from Ireland last year, like 10 boxes of
old
stuff
ones.
and books. I almost don't dare to open them. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what cringe I will find within.
Is it old journals or something?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. Um. Anyway, listen. Um. It has been a very rich and wonderful conversation. And we'll talk again soon. I'll put a link to your wonderful Substack in the show notes. It's Dear Magician, right?
It is, yeah.
Dear Magician is the title on Substack. Rosie Whinray, who is an absolute star, and all of you should be reading her. And
Oh, thank you, Mark. It's so nice to talk to you. I mean, we used to hang out every day during lockdown, during the middle of
been a while.
2020. Like,
Well, look,
every
next
single
time,
day.
you know what they say? Imagine it's like a podcast where you get together with people who you like and find interesting, and you just chat. We don't even need to record it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
tech bros are reinventing the art of just hanging out by pitching it as a podcast that isn't recorded. It's like
totally.
It's like cryptocurrency that we print on paper. You know.
I know. The thing is, the old ways are always there. They're still there. Like, the way that we used to do things is still available to us. And that, I think that's, I mean, I didn't even get into folk singing, but
No,
I'm a real
next time.
Luddite and a real traditionalist. Not a traditionalist in the sense of, like, I can't even think of the right word, but traditional can be a bad word, but there are old ways available to us, and you kind of just have to, like, decline the small change of modernism for the actual hearty old ways.
And one of the best of the old ways is spending time with your friends and loved ones around the fireside and spinning yarns. And on that note, I will say good night and peace. The charms well done.
So I'm back in the cold light of day, just to add a couple of comments on that episode, which was fantastic. Rosie and I had a great chat, and we've been going back and forth in the few days since then, just commenting and expanding. And it's one of those, our conversation is one of those ones that I think we could just keep on going with, and will do, hopefully, in the time and the years to come. And it was great because we both listened back to the episode and thought, wow, yeah, that was really interesting, wasn't it? Yeah, we're really cool. I would hang out with us, which is a nice feeling. And, it does make me miss being able to see my magical people and artist friends in person. However, we did notice that there was a couple of little sound glitches. One of them, about an hour in, I had a problem with my mic and my headphones, and you can hear there that the sound quality of my voice gets much worse, but it does still remain understandable. Just, the perils of dealing with witchy weirdos and wizards is that sometimes it has funny effects on electronic equipment. And there was a couple of little glitches which swallowed up some of the words. Now, Rosie got back to me, and she did just want to specify there was one thing when we were talking about wizarding, and it was the idea that the word wizard, the concept wizard, came as a true inspiration, and it was only afterwards that she really started to think about what wizarding means, or what wizarding as a public role actually implies, or if there were any other wizards and what that meant for being a wizard. So yeah, the cosmology sort of came afterwards, the theory came afterwards, and it was the practice that came first. This was a title that was kind of just dropped on her out of the weave of fate, out of the ether. And I think that really chimes with the way that she describes it. The other thing was when we were talking about, touching the divine through experiences like, eating in a 5-star restaurant or something like that. And she wanted to talk about the idea that every event has a waka papa. It's not possible to take it in isolation. We have to think, who cooked the food? Who grew it? Who transported it? Who served it? Yeah, everything's connected to everything else. You pull one thread, any thread, and you see things are woven together. Magic is about seeing the whole life through time of a singular object or event. So I did want to, just come in with basically what amounts to a verbal footnote, an oral footnote to those things, which is very in keeping also with the rest of the interview. And I wanted to add one thing on my own behalf, which is that, yeah, I totally agree with what we talked about in terms of the gift of our work, the gift that it is to us to be able to do it, to have the time and the headspace to do it, and the talent and the inspiration and the gift that it is that we give it to others. Now, I personally totally admire and respect all of my friends and colleagues who manage to make a living from doing things like podcasting or blogging or writing essays on Substack or doing work that some of which is paid for on Patreon, etc. But for me, I don't want to do that. I made that decision. My work wants to be free. As soon as I start considering it a duty to provide paid content to my subscribers on a weekly or monthly basis for different tiers or whatever it is, it becomes a task and a burden. It becomes homework, and I hate doing homework. And also, I don't want to make any of it inaccessible. It wants to be free. I want it to be free. I want it to be a gift. But of course, as I mentioned in the interview, that means that I am strapped for time because I need to spend time doing things that actually earn money. And so I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link, which I'll put in the show notes. And if anyone feels like the gift of the work that I do is a gift worthy of a gift in return, of money, of a subscription, of support, that will make me able to do more of it. So it will always be free. The blog, the podcast. Obviously, if I make books, sell books, as I have been doing, buy my book, by the way, Unreal City, available from me directly or from all disreputable outlets. But if you want to subscribe and put in a monthly payment or a one-off as a gift in order to not only permit me to spend more time doing this thing that I love doing and that I hope that you love hearing, and also it is a gift for the people who can't afford to subscribe, who can't afford to pay for this, and your contribution will enable me to breathe easier when I take time out of my busy schedule of tasks that are duties and tasks that are paid, to do something just for the love of it. So it would be great if you feel moved to give a gift in support of what I do here, to keep me in candles and cobwebs, and to stop me getting guilt and anxiety when I spend time producing podcasts or writing into the ether, and I hope not into the void. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support, whether it be material, emotional, magical, or simply just your attention. Until next time, bye now.